Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is Bethany. I didn't tell you this. This is episode number 50. This is a
Oh, wow.
landmark episode here, ladies and gentlemen. I did not know we'd be getting to number 50, but here we are today. So we are here with Bethany Hill. And we've been chatting here for several minutes about just all kinds of different things going on down in Arkansas there. So Bethany, and a lot of you already know Bethany from Twitter and Facebook fame, from Joyful Leaders fame. Bethany is spent 21 years in education. She's done it all: kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, curriculum, academic coach, assistant principal, administrator, all kinds of different things, mostly at the elementary level. So Bethany, I'm excited to have you here tonight as a part of our 50th episode for the Group Project Podcast. Welcome. How are you
Thank
doing tonight?
you. I am doing very well. We're preparing for some inclement weather this evening and pivoting to virtual learning tomorrow. So, one of those new, I guess, positive things that have come out of COVID, that we don't have to just cancel everything. And we're getting ice and not snow. So, we're not even missing out on a fun snow day either. So,
So you were in, okay, is it Cabot, Arkansas?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Cabot is right outside of Little Rock, so most people know, Arkansas for either Little Rock or Fayetteville, where the University of Arkansas is. And so I'm located near Little Rock in Central Arkansas.
And so you're mentioning, going back to the school cancellation, tomorrow is your first winter weather related cancellation in a couple years. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. We don't get a lot of snow down here in the South. Every once in a while, every few years, we'll get a nice, maybe 6 or 8 inches, but we haven't had that in a while. So tonight it looks like it's mostly ice coming. So that's not near as fun. We could have power outages and
I know.
wrecks and all kinds of things. But so everyone's hunkering down tomorrow and staying home, and then we'll just have to go from there and see if the temperature gets above freezing tomorrow.
Well, I appreciate you joining me on a night. You mentioned the teachers were a little excited. I'm sure you were a little excited today when you got word that
Yes,
tomorrow was going to be a virtual day.
yeah,
Um, and you said your son had a basketball game we were going to record last night, and with
yes.
all of the cancellations and COVID related changes with sports, like, your son's a senior basketball player, had a game that was rescheduled for last night, and then it sounds like they won that game. Is that
They
correct?
won. They sure did. Yeah, it was a great game. It was a road win too, so that's always exciting. And he has just a few games left. Senior night's
Yeah.
coming up, so it'll be the end of an era there. I've had a boy in basketball for um, many years now because my oldest played too. So now he coaches
That's
in
awesome.
basketball. So I guess we're still in it for that part anyway. We'll be looking at watching him coach his boys. So
That's
I guess
awesome.
I
Now,
guess we'll still be basketball parents, I guess, my husband and I.
sure. Now, are you the type, some parents get really emotional at those senior nights? Is that going to be
Oh
you, or are
yeah.
you just more, what's going to go through your mind that night, you think?
Well, the senior I have right now, he's my baby, and so that's going to be tough. He's the last one, and so it was hard enough with my first one, but I had another one coming up, and so it just felt, I had that to rely on, I guess. But my Garrett, he is going to graduate in May of 2021 and go off to college, and so that part's a little sad. So I may have some tears. I'll be fighting them back, I'm sure.
Uh, uh, well, hey, Bethany, or for the audience to know here, good old Twitter kind of had a chance to link us up a few months ago, and I'd mentioned you in my message to you, like, I've just been just really, you just got a unique, awesome personality, at least from afar. In terms of, like, just bringing positivity and optimism to a very challenging profession, especially profession of education that's gone through a lot here this last year or two with everything going on. So I just thought, what better person to reach out to just say, hey, could I get 55 minutes of your time just to kind of learn from you, pick your brain, kind of learn some of the things that you've done in your leadership journey, as an educator, as an administrator. So that's kind of, and then I just messaged you said, sure, I'll help you out. We'll link up. And so again, I'm just excited to have you here. Maybe just, I gave a really quick introduction. Maybe just, if you don't mind, share your journey, where you've been educational, leadership wise.
Yeah. Well, I'm into my 22nd year of education, and I've I've been in the same district for all of that time, and it's been all in the elementary world. So that's just where my heart is, and I've done many things within that realm. I've taught several different grades and been a curriculum coach, and went into administration. It's been about 12 years now. So that's where my, heart and soul has been for the last decade or so, either in the principal role or the assistant principal role. And I really enjoy that, and love being at the building level. It's hard to think about leaving that and doing other things, but I've ventured out into some, just a little bit of speaking and some writing and things like that. And so I've been able to find a balance there, between being an administrator and then doing some things on my own too. And that's been nice. I've enjoyed that, and I, will probably continue to seek other opportunities like that too, and still enjoy my my time in a building with kids and teachers and staff.
So my typical follow-up question here is, take me back to the first year of teaching. So 21, 22 years ago. Everybody comes in with some things they've got kind of figured out, and some things they don't have figured out.
Very few.
What was I thinking? So maybe just
Yeah.
take us back. Is there anything you can recall from that first year of teaching? Maybe some of the things that you think you did well, and some of the things you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that was a good practice.
Oh, probably more of those than of great things. When you get through college, and I did a little bit of subbing, and every substituting before I, got into my first job. But I just don't. There's no way to truly prepare for living in the classroom, with 20 or 30 little ones. There's so much you can't learn until it's there and you experience it, and it's almost like the afterthought is, and the reflection is where the learning takes place. And so the first few years of teaching is a lot like that. And I think the thing that I probably go back and think about the most, and maybe regret the most, that I started with was how I managed behavior and discipline in the classroom.
Okay.
And I kind of went off of what I saw other teachers doing, which was the best they knew how to do, at the time, and then what I learned in college. I think back on that, and having a behavior chart in the classroom, and having cards that kids had to move or change, and it hurts my heart so much, because I knew at the time that was what needed to happen, because that was my only tool in my tool belt. But looking back on it, I know that was not the way to teach discipline in the classroom. And so the students that I struggled with the most were the ones who were most affected negatively by that system, a public display of what's going on with every kid, and really the feedback that families get through that, it's more negative than positive. And so if I could go back and do things over, that's the number one thing I would change, because it boils down to those relationships, and behavior systems like that are they're just damaging to the emotional part of the child, and then to the relationship of home and school, and I know that some of those things are still practiced today. People, whether it's electronically, by giving points and taking points, or a chart on the, on the wall. But those, it's so good to see that there's less of that now than ever before. I don't see that where I am much at all. But I think it's one of those practices that is disappearing, which is great, because there are just better ways to not even manage behavior, but lead kids, in a more positive way, and reinforce reinforce what you expect, I guess, instead of focusing on rule breaking and, misbehavior, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's huge to me. I think about it all the time, and I have these little faces in my head of like 2 or 3 kids that I'm like, oh, if I could just go back and do this, it would be so much better,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you just got like I mentioned, your personality, just vibrant, outgoing. I'm guessing that first year you had that. Is that correct? I mean, that first year you still had that like
Oh yeah.
natural charisma. Like, even though you were doing some of those things that weren't the best practices, maybe you were able to overcome a little bit of that with just your personality. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of energy then, I probably have a little less now, just because I'm a little bit older, but I was, yeah, I mean, when I first started teaching, I was, barely 23 years old, and, just, I was that person who thought, I can change the world, I mean, like, I went into my profession thinking that, and I never, completely ever doubted that, to the point where, I lost my hope and my sense of efficacy. I mean, I had moments of doubt, and because we fail, we fail a lot. And when we have hundreds of kids that we work with over the years, we will have some failures and things that we wish would have gone differently, with relationships, or with outcomes of students. And, that for sure, I know I've made those mistakes, but at the same time, I have former students that I keep in touch with, and I see them getting married and getting jobs and having babies, and they still connect with me, and that means everything. That's important, because that's a true investment. I even hired a former student a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's
And that's when
awesome.
I realized, oh my goodness, I'm getting old. But she was, fresh out of college, and I taught her in first grade, and then hired her as a teacher. So, it was a little bit eye-opening, but such a proud moment at the same time. And, just to see her be successful and get into her dream job and everything, it's pretty
Now, with
fantastic.
that particular teacher, had you been staying in touch with her, or
Yes.
okay, okay.
Yes. Yeah. She had actually, come and talk to me a couple of times about, resumes and interviewing and things like that. And she is from, she still lived in the hometown after she got, she only went to college a few minutes away. And so we kept in touch. And then when I had a paraprofessional position that opened up in my pre-K, and she actually stepped into that role for me, because it was in the middle of the year, and I needed someone that I knew, could rely on. It's hard to find someone in the middle of the year, so she stepped into that role, and then I ended up having an opening in third grade, for the next year, and so she was hired for that position. So it was a really cool experience to go full circle with her. And
Absolutely.
because how often does that happen? Probably not. It's not an ordinary, normal thing. So it was pretty cool.
So I'm at your okay, so I always do a little bit of research before these shows and just try to make sure I just have good perspective on the guests. And I'm at your Twitter feed right now, and it says Bethany Hill, and it says hashtag joyful leaders. And so I knew that coming in. I knew like your Twitter profile, and then I went to your website, and then your website directed me to the Facebook page, which has all kinds of followers. Like, you've got a huge following with this hashtag joyful leaders. Can you tell me where did that come from? Like what prompted this? What just kind of share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's been, I think Joyful Leaders, it was 4 years old in December. So it's been kind of out there for in the Twitterverse, especially. It started there about 4 years ago, and it really wasn't meant for like a huge group of people to use, but it was sort of just a way to brand myself a little bit, and it started out in my journal, and I doodle a lot, and I write old school quite a bit, in journals instead of, I have an electronic, way of writing too, but I just love to write my thoughts down and journal. And so I had written it down, several times, and then I started reflecting on it a lot and ended up writing a blog about it, and encouraged people to, to look for it on Twitter or whatever. And then people just kind of started using it too. And so it became this thing, and it's not going to trend or anything like that. But it's one of those that the certain people go to on a daily basis to look at. And then there are some very faithful people that post almost on the daily there. And I'm so grateful for those people, and they've become, close friends. Some of them I've been able to meet face to face, and some I have not, but I feel like they're my people, my circle of people, because they post on a regular basis and share, not just positive things, but encouragement and inspiration. Sometimes even the serious stuff, that we have to deal with. It may not be necessarily a positive issue or initiative, but something that we can look at through an optimistic lens, I guess, and try to make the best of a situation, or, how can we turn a negative into a positive, that kind of thing. So it just kind of took off. And so I really love that. And it's even on Instagram, I see people using it. And so I never really expected that, but it's been amazing to see.
Okay, you're right. I just followed you on Instagram. I forgot about that one. Just added you there because you're right. Well, you're right. It's just something, we talked a little bit just before the show about how trying of a year it's just been thing after thing after thing. And if we don't have people in leadership positions who can see through that, can stay the course and stay optimistic, and say, hey, we're gonna get through this. Like schools are really trying to follow the lead of that leader. So I just think I think what you're, kind of what you stand for, what you started 4 years ago, I can see why it resonates in the educational arena, just because people need to hear that and see that. So, and then you got the Facebook group too, correct?
It's a page,
Or a page.
but yes, and it's called Inspiration for Educators, and I push a lot of Joyful Leader stuff through there too. But just articles, quotes, anything that can support or help, or inspire or inform. And sometimes I share the same things through all outlets, but sometimes it is different material even. So excuse me.
You're fine. So, okay. So you've got this, you've kind of got the journaling, and it's just, you've kind of got this mindset about sharing some of these motivational things. What about in the school setting? Like, what are some things? Because I always like to give listeners like some specific action steps they can take back to their building. Is there anything that kind of fits in that joyful leaders mindset or philosophy that you've implemented in your educational leadership?
Well, I think the most, and this really resonated in the last year with everything that's happened, is that, positivity is a great thing, and we all need it, and we need to be around people that are positive. but it can be toxic too, because we can be positive to a point where we're almost in denial of anything that's bad or negative,
Yeah.
and that everything is going to be okay mindset, because sometimes it's just not okay, and it's okay to not be okay, and to look at it through that lens, but to not dwell there, and to not, live into a point where you can't see beyond it, because everything is a season, and challenging times will come to us, but they will pass too. And as long as we can keep that mindset, but be real at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
that it's okay that we're struggling. It's okay that we feel like we can't handle this right now. It's okay to share that, and just to not be okay, and that's not a negative thing. There's a huge difference between being, having a negative mindset and a very fixed mindset, and to be able and to complain, versus I'm about to explode. I need to get all this out. I'm feeling this. I'm worried about this. Just those emotions that we don't need to ignore. We can still have those moments of weakness and vulnerability, and be a positive person and an optimistic person. So I think some people will have that confusion about what it means to be joyful, that it's not always, you're not always bouncing on top of a rainbow. It's not always rainbows and sunshine. Some days are going to be hard. You're going to have moments where you don't feel joyful at all. But it's okay to be that way sometimes. It's just how we pick ourselves up and move forward. That's the biggest thing. And how we influence the people around us, what our energy brings to a room, because we could be struggling and still bring a positive energy into the room and not pull everyone down with us. And in fact, it really, for people that have a hard time relying on others, which I've been that person my whole life. I'm very independent. I love to delegate and empower people with leadership, but when it comes to like my personal struggles, I hate to admit I need help. And so it's like, I'm such a hypocrite when it comes to that. I'm learning. But being able to be vulnerable in that sense, and allow others to be that joy for us. Sometimes it's necessary. We can't always have it and be full of it. So that goes back to who your circle is and who you decide to surround yourself with, because that can either lift you up, or it can bring you so far down. And we need that balance of people that can be there for us when we can't be what we need to be at the moment, and not feel guilt or shame for it.
Gosh,
That's hard.
there's like, as you were talking there, I was like, okay, I want to ask about that. I want to ask about that. You opened up delegation for me. I want to ask about delegation, because that's one of the things when I'm working with newer administrators, they really struggle with. And I've asked the delegation question a few times. It's a really hard question to ask. But what is your mindset or philosophy, or how do you decide if something needs to be delegated? Is this something I should do, or is this something somebody else should do for me? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
No, it's so hard
Because
to ask.
but it's a great question, and it's one that I have definitely probably grappled with my whole leadership career, and still do, because we're always going to have that little voice in our head, should I just do this myself because I see how I need it to be, or should I include someone in on my vision so I can share the load? And so it could be twice as great because someone's with me doing it. And so I tend to feel the latter, but it can be perceived in different ways, because when a leader does delegate things, some people perceive it as, she's not doing her job, she's making other people do it. And so, and I know I've been perceived that way before, but it does boil down to those relationships and who feels empowered. If people feel empowered around you because you've shared some of your vision with them, or you have taken on some of their vision, and empowered them to step out and do something that they've never thought about doing before, to me, that's what matters. And so from the outside, it may look as if other people may be running things or managing things. But if they get to the, to the heart of what's going on in the vision, then the picture's there, and that's what matters. As long as the people around that, that they have they have a purpose, and there's a reason why they were, selected or encouraged to take on something. I think that's what matters the most, and other people may judge that differently, and it's hard not to focus on that,
Yeah.
so.
Do you have an example? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, and I didn't have this in the pre-show, the pre-questions, but is there anything you can think of that you've delegated that you're like, other educational leaders might not delegate this? However, I've chosen to do it, and it's worked well for me. Can you think of anything?
um well, I can think when I was a principal and had an instructional facilitator. That's a very delicate role, or academic coach, curriculum coach, whatever some buildings may call that, because they are not in an administrative role. And but so teachers don't need to see them that way. And so I think empowering and coaching that coach to be able to have personal relationships with teachers and realize that they don't have to share everything with me. That person's not going to be the mediator between the administrator and the teacher. The coach is a safe place. So sometimes even when a facilitator or a curriculum coach, they learn something that, like, I know this needs to improve. But does my principal need to know this, or can I have this conversation with this teacher and build this relationship, and let's help each other, and I am willing to trust that role enough for that to happen, and not have to know every single detail of what may be happening in a classroom that I don't necessarily get to see, or I haven't picked up on, because that's the thing. Sometimes the administrator is the last to know in a building. I mean, it happens. And then, when that happens, you're like, sometimes it's a great thing. And then sometimes it's awful, and you're like, how did I miss this? And, when you finally learn about it, but, and I've always thought, like, why didn't someone tell me? But, sometimes it's just not meant for, some things were meant not to know, and for teachers and coaches to work through themselves. And so letting go of that can be really hard, because it takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of refocusing on things that can I guess empower people to trust each other enough, to change each other. So it doesn't always have to be the administrator that grows a teacher, or it could be a peer, it could be the teacher across the hall, it could be the academic coach, it could be a paraprofessional and a teacher pairing up that tend to to empower each other. So letting go of some of those things and helping people, especially in that coaching role, sometimes that can be perceived as, well, is she doing evaluations? Is she, because she doesn't even know this, So it's a very thin line there, but I guess that's a big example I can think of, because it's such a delicate place, because the instructional facilitator will feel so pulled between administrator and teacher, and empowering that person is delicate, because you never want them to come across as another administrator, but you want them to be empowered enough to lead conversations that lead to change and student achievement, because that's the goal of that role ultimately. And they are a leader in the building.
For being put on the spot for the delegation example, like, that was a outstanding example. I feel like we've been having literally been having that same conversation in our district the last few days about how that line is blurred at times. And it's I love how you mentioned a few times. The next question was going to be about relationships, because you've mentioned relationships and trust. That's been a theme I've heard throughout our conversation so far. How, you seem like a natural at building relationships. Is there anything you can think of like that you do intentionally to build up relationships with, whether with an instructional coach, with a teacher, anybody in your building? What is maybe an intentional step that you do to build that relationship?
Well, anytime I have ever started in a new building, whether that is, I changed buildings when I became an academic coach. So I had to get to know a whole new staff, plus the role was brand new. And then I became an assistant principal and had to learn a new staff, and get them to be able to learn me. And then became a principal and had to repeat that. And now I'm actually in the assistant principal role again, because that's just that's where I need to be right now in order to do some other things that I love to do too. And so in the last couple of years, I've started that process again. And it's so fun in many ways to learn about different people, but it's scary at the same time, because we all know that we can say things and not even mean to offend or upset or someone take it the wrong way because they don't know our personality. And so I think the biggest thing is to just really focus on the person and not the teacher, and get to know who they are as a mom, as a wife, or a husband, or or a father, or a friend, or a daughter, or a son, and know those things that are going on in their world. If they have children that they are following every weekend for basketball tournaments and baseball tournaments, and they get home every Sunday night at 9:30 and they're trying to get in bed, we need to go ask, how did the weekend go? Did y'all win? How was it? Or, if someone's struggling with a sick relative, or taking care of someone sick, we need to know those things. Those things are more important than knowing what's on their lesson plans that week, I guess. And so when you can prioritize that and see the person, I think that makes a huge difference, because that empathy is there to understand where someone is in that moment, even though we can't be in their shoes physically and we can't experience what they're experiencing. If we know enough about them to be able to tell when something might be off, we can have that conversation and we can check in and see how things are going and give them that space if they don't need to talk about it, or just make sure that they know the space is there if they need it, to talk about it. So everyone has their different way of dealing with things, and I always say there's that invisible backpack that kids come to school with, and it's weighted down with all these different things, but educators and staff come with those heavy backpacks too. And it's not just academic stuff and professional career stuff that they're dealing with. It's all of the responsibilities of being an adult that sometimes just don't go the way we need them to. So we have to remember that they're balancing a personal life too, on top of a professional life.
So I mentioned your website earlier, which people definitely need to check out. There's so much good stuff there, blog entries. Just one thing I was reading about was just some of the different, you mentioned you some speaking engagements,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a few different, there's like a kind of a menu of things you speak about. And one thing that caught my mind was a topic called using social media to brand your school. I feel like you are a natural, like, whether or not this doesn't sound right, but like a natural marketer, like, how to like use social media to spread a message. What are some tips or tricks that you've got for school leaders in terms of spreading that message about their school?
Well, I'm a firm believer in the power of social media for good. And I know that it's abused, and we've seen that so much in the last year or two. And it's honestly so infuriating when I see people use it for negative things. It just, I have to just take a breath and, step back from it, and sometimes figure out, okay, do I need to be following these people? Because maybe I just need to let that go. But social media, to me, I mean, I remember starting my first Facebook page for a school, and being the person who led, or who was the main administrator over that. And just seeing families latch on to it and tag, if there's a picture of a student on there, it's their neighbor. So they're going to tag their neighbor, to make sure their neighbor sees their daughter on Facebook. And so all of these little side relationships and conversations that can come about are so powerful. And it kind of tears the walls down of the school. And especially in our COVID, existence right now, we don't even allow visitors in the building. And so, to me, I think I try to put myself in a parent's shoes or guardian, a guardian of children, that we're just dropping our children off and they're going into this building, and we really don't know what anything is like because we've never been in. We went in for maybe, just to meet the teacher that one day, and then we've not been in since. So that's hard. And I think the more transparent we can be on social media, sharing the celebrations and even just basic information, getting it out in different ways, through Twitter, through a Twitter feed that's on the website, that feeds through the website. So people who even, aren't on Twitter can still look there and see things. Of course, the school website is powerful too. And Facebook, I used to use Instagram. And when they started doing Instagram stories, that was so powerful because you could just, you could throw up just quick little videos about things like a glimpse of recess time, of kids playing a game, or just those little joy moments that have nothing to do with academics, but it shows the emotional and social side of school that families feel great about. When they see that, they know their kids are loved and taken care of, and that's huge. And it helps build that trust in a whole different way. And I think it's so powerful. And Facebook Live, we've done read alouds on Facebook, get permission from the author, to read a story, a bedtime story on a Sunday night. That's awesome. Or, I did a snow day one time. I did a Flipgrid, and so kids and families were able to take a video and upload it and share their snow day with everyone. And so that was the most fun thing because we saw so many families that were spending time together, building a snowman or sledding or whatever they chose to do that day. And those are cherished memories, and they get to see what their neighbor's doing, and they get to know other, the children that their kids come home and talk about. They see that family, and of course, not everyone is going to be as active, and some people don't have social media at all. So we still have to figure out ways to connect, that don't involve social media. But I think in the society and the world we live in today, most people are connected in some form or fashion, through an outlet, and we have to meet them where they are and use those tools. And it also models that digital citizenship for our kids and for our families, to push the positive out and to share the great things about their school instead of, getting on Facebook and ranting about the pizza being burned that day, or something like that. And then it starts a wave of negativity, in the community. So I think, and you're still going to have that, but I think it happens less when families in the community feel like they know what's going on in your school all the time, on the daily.
So you mentioned, I've been writing down some notes here. You mentioned three kind of platforms or ideas that I think people out there listening need to really think about. You mentioned Instagram stories, Facebook Live, and Flipgrid. I'm a bit, all three, we've used Flipgrid, we've used Facebook Live. I don't think we've used Instagram stories, but I'm starting to use it in my personal, it's just somebody who's out there who wants to get their story, those short video clips or those messages out to parents, like that is what people are looking at when they flip through their Instagram. They're flipping through those stories. I mean, yeah. That is a big thing. I mean, I just think you brought up three great things that not a whole lot of educational leaders know about or use. So I think that was outstanding. Those were great examples. Okay, I'm gonna ask you one more question about this like leadership education aspect, and then we'll hop over into like kind of some personal growth questions. Okay. What One bit of what one bit of advice do you have for aspiring administrators?
Oh my.
Big,
There's
big,
so
big question,
much.
huh?
Yeah. I think if I could go back and talk to my future administrator self, 12 years ago, before I ever interviewed for an administrator position, um, is to just think beyond the title that's attached to your name, because becoming an administrator immediately, even if you've had these huge teams of friends, teacher friends, or from different buildings or in your building, when you step over into that administrator side, it's different.
Mm, mm,
You're just seen a little bit different, even though you may have the same friendship, but they're people, other teachers that are people who are non-administrators, anybody who works in a school, they're going to be a little bit more um, you know um, reserved, maybe. I don't know if even that's the word, but just not quite as open, and even vulnerable at first, because sometimes that administrator is going to be the supervisor or the evaluator, or and it's hard to let your guard down sometimes in front of how they perceive us as a boss. And I hate that word. I really do, in education, because I just don't think it fits anywhere in our field. My husband's, and he's more on the business side, and he's the boss, and he's fine with being the boss, but he's also a really great leader too. He's a very motivational leader, and keeps his people happy and everything. But it's different, in a business world than it is in our elementary profession, because teachers are leaders too. And so if you just focus on people with an administrative role as a leader, or just use the term teacher leaders, um, then there are going to be people out there that will never see themselves as a leader, and that is not okay, because a teacher leads every single day in their classroom. They lead a group of students, and if they don't have those leadership skills developed, and people that surround them and push them toward empowerment, then they're never going to be the type of teacher that they probably want to be or aspired to be when they first started. So I think the biggest thing is to not get wrapped up in that title, and to not allow it to take over who you are at your core. Even the word principal, I struggle with some, because people see that as a little bit threatening. And I used to go by lead learner when I was a principal. And so, because it just made me I made myself the most vulnerable. I have so much to learn. I have not arrived because I have that title of a principal, so, and to support the learning of everyone else too, while trying to improve myself at the same time. So it's not about, here's the administrator and here are the people down here, but I think sometimes it's quick to feel that way when you're first hired, and how are you going to manage your people, and manage the building, and manage this and manage that, when it's very different, to lead in those areas. And it doesn't always look like it won't look like management. Actually, it actually looks like a little bit of release of control, when great leadership is happening. So
You mentioned at the beginning of the show, all 22 years have been in the same district. That can be some positives and negatives in terms of
yeah.
moving up within the district.
Mhm.
And you don't need to give a huge lengthy answer, but any tips you get, there's a lot of aspiring administrators who listen. They're wondering, should I try to move up, get that AP role or that
Mhm.
instructional coach role in my district, or should I go out to a different district? Any quick thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, I look back on my career, and as much as I consider myself a risk taker, and willing to try lots of new things, when I think about where I've been, I'm extremely comfortable. And if I still have aspirations to maybe look outside of my district to do some other things, especially now that my children, are about to be all out of school, and that's not something I have to focus on anymore. But the thing about being in the same place, the same district, the same community is we really get used to those surroundings, and sometimes it can be very hard to see the perspective of a different demographic. And my community is a very white community. It's known for being more of an affluent community, but we have a lot of poverty that's hidden. It doesn't necessarily show like it does in some communities, but it's there. And a lot of people don't realize it's there. And then some, especially educators, see it every day, in our schools. And so I think I have sort of cheated myself a little bit on learning more about diversity and various demographics and those challenges that some schools have that many of the schools in my district don't have. And I led a Title I school for 5 years, and I was in culture shock with that, even, because I'd never been in a Title I school. I'd always, been in non-titles. But even just a few miles down the road in another district, it's totally different, a different situation. And I know that I would go there and be shocked at some of the things that I see. So, I don't have that type of experience, and I do regret that in some ways, because I know that it would make me a better educator to be able to see the different types of communities and perspectives and challenges that some schools have that mine will never have.
I just love your vulnerability. You've said that a couple of times too, that idea about you being a lead learner. And I have so much to learn. I mean, I can just through some of your answers, like I can sense that. And that draws, that draws people to a leader. And I can see why, people enjoy working with you, because you're not afraid to admit, hey, I haven't been in those settings, or I haven't experienced this. And man, I missed out on that. And I just think that's a really cool thing for people to hear. So I appreciate you kind of sharing that.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mentioned before the show, and people who listen to the show regularly know that we don't get too deep in the weeds with education. We talk about some generalities. And then the last little bit of the show, we always focus on just some professional, some fun questions, but also some kind of like professional growth questions. So we've got about maybe about 10, 15 minutes left, if that's okay, Bethany.
Absolutely.
And then we'll let you on your way. I mentioned before the show, we're both big sports fans here.
Yes.
And you're a big Razorback fan. I'm a big Iowa Hawkeye fan. Iowa, we're kind of on the skids right now. We're really struggling. We've got a game here tonight, so it's on in a little bit. So I'll try not to keep you too long, so I can go back and watch the game here.
Yeah,
but
you can't miss that.
I know. Maybe I want to. We've been really struggling, so I might not be too happy to see that. But okay, so you're just outside Little Rock. You're down the road from Fayetteville, not too far. And you're in it's Cabot, correct? Cabot. Okay, so I mentioned you before the show. I actually drove, I don't know exactly where I was at, but I went down to the Conway, Morrilton, Arkansas area, about an hour south of you. So the question I ask, if I'm ever through Cabot again, or if somebody else comes through that area just outside of Little Rock there, where's one place they just got to check out? Where's the place that Bethany's going to be hanging out at?
I hang out at my school a lot. I would love for people to come see my school. That's the first
San
place.
Filippo said the same thing too. So you're not the first one to say that.
Good. But I think one place, not necessarily a place I would hang out, but one place that's very humbling to see is we have a Confederate cemetery that's in our area. And, this is the Deep South. And when you go out there, it is just, endless tombstones of people who lived in this area and died in the Civil War. And so, but on the flip side of that, we are also a community who struggles to accept diversity overall, and that's a personal inner struggle that I have, with that right now, because I'm trying to learn so much, and I don't live around it. And so I have to rely on people that I can ask the questions that are probably really dumb and sometimes just ignorant, for lack of a better word, because I just don't know. And so I've become this person who is constantly trying to look outside of my community and into what other schools, what other communities are doing to make people feel more accepted and included, because that's just, it's not anyone's fault necessarily. It's just the dynamic of my area and where I live. And living in the South is really a struggle too, because there's so much of a conservative mindset, and some of the things that have even come up in legislature over the last couple of months are just almost sickening. Things like not teaching Black history. Why would we not teach Black history? Why does a legislator want us to not teach Black history? And not just 1 month, but all year. And so those things I battle with a lot. And so, I mean, the community where I'm from is based on a lot of whiteness. I mean, it was built on that. It was built on, it's basically redlined, and I know people know the history from Little Rock, with Central High and the integration that happened in the 60s with the Little Rock Nine, and then that's a famous story. But and then that's fascinating too, because it's only about 20 minutes away from me as well. So I would definitely, if you're ever in the area in Little Rock, go to Central High School and take the tour, because it is incredible, and you'll have chill bumps the whole time. It's amazing.
So yeah.
Go ahead.
I love your answer. You got me. I want to ask you a question then, because I think a lot of people, here in Iowa, pretty conservative, some of the same things you're talking about. Is there anything that you've done with your staff, or that you've seen done, and that kind of opens up that conversation about having some of those conversations? People want to know that stuff, because here in Iowa, we're like, okay, what do we do? Where do we start? Any ideas?
Well, I think sometimes just looking at our language, and how we, even with our traditions, and whether that's holidays and things that are, in the South, or just even in the country, versus traditions just for that school. Whether it's a play or a musical, or some type of family event, we need to look and see, is there anything that we're displaying, that we're saying, that we're using, that could be offensive to people that aren't like us, the ones that are coming, that move into us. We have a very military community, and that's where a lot of the diversity that we do have, that's where we see it, is through our military people who are stationed with us. And so and every year we become a little bit more diverse. And so people who've lived here for a long time, they think we're very diverse, but we're not, compared to, to many surrounding areas. And so I think that reflection on the language and the traditions and those things that we've always done that seem special, but looking at it through an equity lens and seeing, does this leave people out, or does this make someone feel uncomfortable because of a belief system, or because of a cultural divide, or whatever it may be? Because if we're making someone feel alienated, we have to stop. no matter how long we've done this, no matter how much we love it, if it's going to offend even one family because it doesn't support where they're coming from or who they are, then we can't do it anymore. And that's very hard for some people to accept, but it's also hard for us to look at ourselves that way because we have this implicit bias that just is there. And to see beyond it is really hard. It can cause a lot of guilt, once we realize that some of the things that we've done that have been very unintentional and out of ignorance, but we've done them. And so how do we change that and evolve into a system that's more inclusive and that's more culturally responsive to every group of people, whether that's a people of color or a religious belief or, a sexual orientation or a gender identity, whatever it may be. And so, that is hard sometimes because it may step over into a belief system of an educator. And those are things we have to separate. And, we can't go by what we believe and expect to be culturally responsive for everyone. So we have to figure out ways to separate that. And it's hard.
So I've taken you down a couple of different rabbit holes and you've done great. I mean, I've asked you like some off the cuff, like not in the script questions, and you've done amazing. So I appreciate that answer. That was really well done. I really appreciate it. What is one up to $50 purchase you've made in the last year that has made your life easier?
Oh, I would say, this question, I've thought about it for a few days since you sent it.
Okay, good.
There's so many little things. But in the spring last year, whenever we had to learn from home, we had to try to shift to a digital remote learning environment and just trying to connect with our families, not even concerned about curriculum, just making sure they're still out there with us. I purchased some equipment for being, either being live or recording, like a vlog set with a microphone and a camera, a place to hold your phone. And I bought a package that was like $49, $49.99. And it is so great. I mean, I didn't realize, that I guess that equipment, I always thought it was something, that needed to be for a professional. I mean, like I look at your mic right now and I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks like, you're in a radio studio. But so I think those little gadgets are everywhere. I mean, I can look on Amazon and find all these neat little things, just to make the experience more comfortable. And, I think educators, that's what a lot of them struggle with the most, is being on a screen and knowing that, their students' families are hearing them in the background and seeing them, and it's a whole new world, so those little things that we can do to make ourselves comfortable are worth it, and not as expensive as I thought anyway, when I started digging into little gadgets and things. So that's what I would say is my favorite so far.
I feel like every 10 episodes, I add one more piece to the puzzle here. So the microphone, I've got a tripod back here. I've got a Logitech camera. I mean, some of the same things we're talking about, so no, I agree. There's all kinds. It's just endless, the options on Amazon or Best Buy or whatever. So check it out. I agree with you. Game changers.
Yeah.
Okay. What is one book that has greatly influenced your life?
Well, I would have to say I love John Gordon so much. He's one of my favorite authors, but I read The Energy Bus many years ago. My superintendent bought a copy for each administrator, and we kind of read it as a group. And I just fell in love with that book. Amazing. And it's definitely a life changer. And when I became a principal, Energy Bus for Leadership, or Energy Bus for Schools leadership journey, was just starting to come to the surface. And John Gordon and his partner in crime with the school version of Energy Bus reached out, and we actually kind of piloted an energy, what an Energy Bus school might look like. And so my first elementary school that I was a principal at was the first ever Energy Bus school.
Wow.
And so I really, we had been implementing some of the the basic idea and purpose behind that book for a couple of years. And so the kids knew their version of the rules for the ride of your life, because he has a children's book for them. And I had bought a copy for every teacher to have in their classroom. And then every teacher and staff member had the adult version of the book. And so when we were approached about doing, joining in and doing the leadership for schools, it was such a great transition, because the kids had the language already, and Nikki Spears, she's the CEO of that, and leads that whole initiative, and she's so amazing and brings such energy. And so she came to our school several times to do training with teachers and even with students. She met with groups of students too, and modeled things for our staff. And so we did that for 2 years, and it was a really great experience. And I don't know how many there are now. There are hundreds, I think, of Energy Bus schools all throughout the nation now. But that book is a life changer. If you've never read it, it's a must for sure. Energy Bus by John Gordon, and he's fantastic anyway. His Twitter is great, and he constantly pushes out encouraging material. So
I saw something. So John, I follow John on all the social medias, and he had a post earlier today on Instagram that said the top, he was, even in 2020, I mean, here we are, he's been doing this forever. One of the top 5 best-selling authors of 2020, John Gordon it was John Gordon, Simon Sinek, James Clear, we're all in that Dave Ramsey. So John is a legend. Yeah. Now, have you met John? Did you get a chance to meet him at all?
I have not met him. I have talked with him on the phone. He called me once.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I was blown away, because I didn't recognize the number, and so I didn't answer it. And he left me a voicemail, and I was like, oh my gosh, why did I answer it? And so I called back, thinking, I don't even know if he'll answer, but he did. And so we were able to have a good conversation. He wanted to, he just wanted some feedback on how things were going and all that. But I was so starstruck just to be able to talk with him on the phone. And I was able to do a webinar with him one time with, that was basically kind of like an infomercial a little bit about the Energy Bus. So John and Nikki and myself, were able to do that, and other school leaders got on, and listened, and it was a time for questions. And then he sent a video to my staff when we first started the whole Energy Bus thing. And I mean, I was in awe of that, because he talked to us personally, Central Elementary, and just mentioned us, we felt like he was right there with us. And so that was amazing, but I would love to meet him in person. I can imagine the energy, because you can feel it even through his the words that he tweets out, and his daily messages that he has you can subscribe to a daily message, and it's always so positive. So he's an inspiration for sure.
I see a lot of similarities between what he tweets about or he shares on all social and what you do. I really do. There's a definite a theme there. I agree. Okay, here's the next one that's kind of a newer question. What is one phone app that has positively, we talked about, the negative side sometimes of phone apps. What's one that has positively impacted your life?
Without a doubt, I'd have to say Boxer. Boxer is a walkie-talkie app, basically. I know most people out there listening probably know what it is. It's free. You can there is a purchased version where you can do more things with it, and I've used it both ways. Like right now, I have the free version because I didn't renew. But there have been times where I've purchased so I can have specific groups, and there are just other things that you can do. But the free version is just as great, and I have used it for book studies. To connect with other people, and who want to get in the group just for that, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then you dissolve the group when it's over. And then some people want to stay, and they're like, can we form a group so we can just talk about this still, and so then you may have spin-off groups. But I love Voxer book studies because it's not, you get to hear people's voices, and that can be very powerful. It's one thing to read words from someone, but when you hear their voice, it can put a whole different spin on it. I also love to use it for teacher feedback, and I found that to be very powerful. I don't use it like on the daily, just in spurts, especially when I feel like my message to a teacher maybe won't come across in like a note or an email. And if it's just a walkthrough and you see something amazing, to be able to share that with your voice is incredible. And it makes me feel good too. It's also an efficient way, like if you're just on the go and you know that you're not going to see that teacher for the rest of the day, or or maybe you don't have time to write a note, you get called out of the classroom before you have time to give feedback, things like that. Because the teacher doesn't have to have the app. You can download it and send it through an email, and it's just an audio message. So they don't have to have the Voxer app and be in the app to listen to the message. So it's very powerful to be able to use as a teacher feedback tool too.
So I know there was another previous guest who talked about using Voxer in that way. I'm pretty sure it was episode 37, Matt Townsley, who's a college professor here in Iowa, who gives feedback in that same way. So when you hear multiple people saying the same thing, that this is a game changer, like, okay, maybe you need to look into this. So
Yeah.
anybody else who wants to, that you were really doing a good job of selling it. Matt, back in episode 37, also talked about doing that. That's great. So, okay, next one is, what is your go-to item at a convenience store?
Oh my gosh, sour candy, anything sour. Sour Patch Kids, Sweet Tarts, Nerds, any of those things. That's my road trip food if I'm going to be in the car, for a while, or if going to, when I watch my son play, I have to have gum, or I have to chew on something, because I stay nervous. So I always have sour candy in my purse. And that's, I grab that every time. If I'm going to go in a gas station, I'll get some type of sour candy to eat.
Now, is there there's some like extra like extreme sour things. Is that your thing, or do you kind of just take just kind of go with the normal sour?
I love this. I love it all.
Okay.
I will eat Warheads. That's about as sour as you
I
can
was
get.
gonna say Warheads. That's what I'm thinking about, was those extreme Warheads or whatever they're called.
Yes, love it.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay.
That's the kid in me, I guess.
Okay, so since we're talking about road, let's talk Arkansas sports for just a minute here. Who is your all-time favorite Arkansas Razorback athlete of all time?
Oh, I would have to say Darren Mcfadden. He was a running back for the Razorbacks, and he went into the NFL. He was so phenomenal, just pure magic to watch. And we were so disappointed that he didn't win the Heisman. He was a finalist, but he's just amazing. He won about every other award that there was that year. But he was drafted, went in, played for the Raiders for a while, but he just struggled with injuries and everything. But he was just so magical, whether it was on TV or live. We were able to see him play in person many times. But He comes back to Little Rock every year and does like a football camp and at U of A, and so he's still around. He shows his face in Arkansas quite a bit, but he's the most dynamic, probably, in my opinion, to come out of Arkansas in any sport.
I love that answer. I actually saw him play once in college.
Did you?
I didn't think we'd have this connection here, but now when I lived in Florida, I went and saw they played a bowl game. They played at the Citrus Bowl or the Capitol up in
Capital One.
Orlando against Wisconsin. Were you at that game?
No, I did not go to that game.
I was
remember
there.
it.
I was gonna say, like, we might have been in the same stadium.
Yeah.
But, I remember I was like, man, that guy's a freak. You've said magical a couple of times.
Oh,
He was incredible. I agree.
He was. And those were the good old days in Arkansas football, because the last several years have been rough for us. So we have a new coach now, and had an okay season last year, just with leftover recruiting and things like that. So I mean, he has to get out from under that, but Coach Pittman, I think, is going to do great things for us. So we have hope again in Arkansas football.
So okay, I ask one more question here. I'm going way over. I hope you're okay. So
No, you're good.
Brett Bielema's back in the Big Ten. What do Arkansas fan? Is he kind of like, yeah, we're happy he's gone, or can you comment on that?
Oh yeah. Well, he wasn't. Well, I mean, some people may disagree, but he was never a fit for the SEC to begin with. I was not happy with that hire. My husband thought he would be great, and he was in spurts. I mean, like he was okay, but his winning ability wore off pretty quick. Yes. So we were pretty ready. I think he stayed about a year too long, maybe two. So and I'm surprised the Big Ten took him back, because he kind of dissed them a lot that last year or so before Arkansas let him go. And but now he's back in. So
he's not really well liked in Iowa.
Is he not?
No, I mean, he was, I think he's got the Iowa tattoo on his leg, I think. But he went to Wisconsin. When you go to Wisconsin, like, all right, man, we're and now he's at Illinois. So we're in the same, we're the same, we're thinking the same thing here. But
that's how we are with Alabama.
Okay.
we get really tired about if they go to a championship game. I'm going to root for them every time because it's SEC. But oh my goodness, we can't stand Alabama. We get so tired of hearing about it.
Saban, you're too good, man. Just retire.
I highly respect him as a coach, and I respect their program. But they win way too much. So, but SEC's tough. We're known for just kind of beating the crap out of each other. It's a brutal conference.
It is. It is. All right. We'll speed it up here. I'm going to get you out of here here in a minute. Okay. I really want to ask you this question, because you seem like such a reflective person. Can you recall a job you applied for but did not get? And did you learn anything from this experience?
Yes, I applied once for a position that was in another district, and was more of a central office type position. I knew I was probably underqualified for it, but I also knew that I didn't have the experience in cultural diversity that was necessary to have the position. So I interviewed anyway. I was given an interview, so that was great. I mean, I was happy to just be to be able to get some time to spend. But I realized it was one of those things. When I talked through it, I knew, like, I'm not the person for this position, because I'm not going to be able to connect and relate to the people that I would serve. And but then I'm like, what do I do about that? How do I stretch myself and get to a point where I can be that person? And so that's where I really started to shift my thinking, and look at how much I need to learn still regarding just different dynamics of schools. And that not most schools. I mean, no schools districts are going to be this, exactly alike, but I've been in the same one, for all this time, and it's a wonderful school district. It's one of the best in Arkansas, and we have a great reputation, and I'm continually proud of it, and I'm a product of it too. But I do see that it has been somewhat detrimental to me, to my growth as an educator. To be in the same district for so long and not branch out and try something out of my comfort zone. So that's what has me thinking. That was a few years ago, and I still haven't moved yet. I haven't budged yet. But I think that's coming. Sometime in the future. So it's a brave step, though, and rejection is hard. Nobody wants to be told, well, we don't think you're quite qualified for this. But unless we branch out and try, then we're never going to know what opportunities are out there. So I try to remind myself of that too.
Yeah. Okay. What last question here before we kind of wrap things up? What is one big goal? It could be professional or personal. You've shared a couple already, but what would you say is your one biggest goal right now?
I think where my focus has been on where it has really centered on in the last year, especially, but really since COVID hit, it just has been on my heart so much, is advocacy for mental and physical well-being of kids, for acceptance and inclusion, and achieving that level of awareness where we're not just an ally for anti-racism, but more of an activist. And I'm learning my role in that and how I can serve in that area, especially being a white woman. How will my voice, influence others? How can it help? Without coming across as a white savior or someone who seems to know what it's like to be, in a different group, because that's not it at all. But being able to advocate for specific groups of people, because they're humans, has been on my heart so much in the last year, especially. It's not about it's not about just saying I'm not a racist. It's about really being anti-racist and showing what that looks like, and facing my own bias, and accepting that I see things a specific way, and I need to learn to see it in other ways, based on other people's experiences and not just mine, and being open to accepting that criticism, and sometimes that it takes to learn how to advocate, and what the correct route is, and what can be more damaging, and because some things can do more harm than they can good. And so that's kind of where I am right now in my growth, and it's taking a lot of reading and listening, and just looking at the news differently, looking at current events differently, and seeing how this affects this group of people in a great way, but what about other people? What is it doing here, and is it good for everyone, or is it going to be damning to certain groups? So I'm really pushing myself in that area, and learning from people who are already in that role of advocating for equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And I know some school districts are creating specific positions for that because it's that big of a priority, and I think that's incredible.
So I'm just curious, like, you've got such a big following, 50,000 followers on Twitter is not, that is impressive. That 30 plus thousand followers on your Facebook page. And it can be such a fine line as an educator, to, like, to want to share some of your thoughts and viewpoints without, polarizing your following. Anything you've learned, I'm just curious, from somebody who has a huge following, much, much more than myself. What have you learned this last couple years about trying to be that advocate, but also being a school leader and knowing, does that make sense?
Yes,
What,
absolutely.
what have you learned?
Um,
Any key takeaways?
well, I will say I've had to unfollow some people just because, or even block some people who've just, um, basically berated me on a particular topic, or, wanting to banter, back and forth in a discussion on social media. And that's just not something I'm willing to go deep into. I may provide an explanation, or I may provide evidence of something or an article, something to inform. But, I'm not going to get into like a partisan conversation, because I don't see these things as political. And what I've found is people who do see those things as political, those are the people who, they're the ones who take the jabs at me the most. And it does hurt sometimes, when someone, just calls you out publicly and basically undermines everything that you have stated. But what I've found is it's people, more people that I know from my community have tended to do that than people in my network. And so that's been very difficult because, the conservative nature of the area, of the South, where I live, and the values and the beliefs that are there and are so embedded. Sometimes I think those people feel threatened by just the advocacy for all people, even if it's not something that they believe in or think is right, or, whatever. And so that's where I've noticed, and that is hurtful. I really, really struggled with that for a few months, when I first started putting myself out there, that I'm learning about, white privilege and implicit bias and anti-racism and the true history of, that's on that side and their perspective, not just the white version that most of our children learn and that we learned. When I really started digging in and reading books that were suggested, I'm blown away at how much has been kept from our kids and how much was kept from me as a student, growing up, and how much I don't have a clue about what happened, certain events that I'm like, why are we not sharing these things with our students? This is what can create unity. If all kids can see these sides and see how different groups of people were affected through time, we wouldn't be recreating the same mistakes over and over. And so but I think other people don't see it that way. They see it as false information or misinformation, or taking a side, a political stance or whatever, or pushing beliefs on students. And so I really struggle with that because I don't see it as a partisan or even bipartisan issue. It's just humanity. Being a human is all you need to get respect and to be loved and to be treated fairly. And then sometimes fair is not always equal. So that's where that equity piece comes in. And there are groups of people who they're just oppressed, and they lack the resources and the things that are needed to be as successful as another group of people. And that's very hard for some people to see too. And I'm still trying to understand that as well. And it's like I look for implicit bias in everything now, like in even paperwork that I fill out, it may say race or gender, and I'm like, well, what? It only has two gender. What if somebody doesn't identify this way? But that's a very thin line to have to when you live in a very conservative area of the country. So we can be easily judged.
Wow.
For sure, I can be easily judged, for that. So it's been hard. I've had to, take some hits from people that I've known for years, and but it to me, I go back to what Dr. Basil Martin. Do you know who Basil Martin is?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, gosh,
He's
I know that
incredible.
name. I know that
Yeah,
name. I can't pinpoint, but yeah, go ahead.
he's amazing, and I've heard him say many times, like in podcasts or in webinars, that you when you're doing the work it takes for to achieve equality, to do things in an equitable way, you will upset people and you will probably lose relationships with people, but it's worth it, because you can do that and still be respectful and still um, you know stay true to your cause, basically, and not waver from it in order to make someone feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because not everyone's ready to do that yet, and I'm still not some days. There are days where I type something or I share something, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to post that today. I can't. And then I think about it later and I'm like, no, yes I am. And then I get, and I'll get my brave, my brave boots on and put it out there. But it's difficult to to know that you will be scrutinized for advocating. It will happen. It's unfortunate, but it's part of it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I lied to you. I said it'd be an hour, and we're about an hour and a half. And this has been a fascinating, like an incredibly insightful conversation. You are touching on so many things educational leaders are you are not the only person going through some of these hardships or these
Oh, absolutely.
difficult, everybody. I can only, Matt, you've done a great job of kind of characterizing, the community and some of the struggles there. And I feel like a lot of the same struggles are happening up here in the upper Midwest as well.
Yeah.
Just some struggles. And I just really, really appreciate you being open and sharing some of the things you're working on. I think I could keep talking to you for another 2 hours. I told you I gotta let you go here.
You have a game to get to.
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm trying to be good about not looking at scores and then like recording it on YouTube TV and starting from the beginning. I don't know if you do that or
Yep.
not.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and it kind of works well because then you can just fast forward through commercials and you catch
Yep.
up through
You'd
halftime.
eventually catch up to live. Then you can look at Twitter and see what everyone's saying.
You are reading my mind. We think the same way on a lot of things.
I keep a Twitter feed open on, whatever the hashtag is for the game or whatever, and always I'm looking at what people are saying while I'm watching the game. Because it's good to see different perspectives, because you see the other side too. You see the fans from the other team, and it's fun to do that.
It is fun. Twitter has made sports watching. I can't even remember what it was like before, because I've always got the Twitter feed going. Oh
It's
gosh,
fun. There's usually a lot of laughs. There's a lot of laughs in there, and then you'll find some facts that are fascinating at the same time, and so it's in great replays and things like that. So it makes it more fun.
Oh gosh. Well, this has been great. You've made a great episode number 50 here. In case you're joining us way late, 90 minutes in, this is Bethany Hill, episode 50, the Group Project Podcast. We talked education, we talked leadership, some sports, some political type things, I guess. And then we talked some candy. We talked about a lot of different things here. So Arkansas sports and Darren Mcfadden, all that. So we've talked about it a few times, your website, Facebook, where would you want people to come to find you on social media?
Yeah, I love to connect with people. So I have a Facebook page, Inspiration for Educators. You can just search that and it will come up. And I just post, all kinds of things that I find, from articles to images, even just encouragement quotes. Sometimes it's not even necessarily about school, but just about self-care, or just us as humans, not just educators. So I try to keep it balanced on there. And then I'm on Twitter, of course, Beth Hill 2829. And then I have a website, BethanySHill.com. And sometimes I blog on there. It's been a hot minute since I've done that. But so I need to probably push something out. But there are other things on there too, resources and some information. And then I have a Joyful Leaders Instagram. It's just Joyful Leaders, so it's easy to find. And then I'm also on Instagram as Bethany Hill 1. I push a lot of even family and friends stuff out on that, as well as some educational things and some faith-based things, that inspire me. So yeah, I'm out there. So yeah, I love to connect with people. So
Well, Bethany,
I look forward to that.
yeah, thank you so much for giving up so much of your time. You've got a big ice day tomorrow, so some virtual
Yep.
learning going on. So I'll let you plan
Virtual Learning Day.
going for that. So thank you so much. Keep up the great work. I was impressed before I met you. Now I'm even more impressed. So,
Oh, well, thank you. I'm honored to be your number 50. Thank you for
all
having
right.
me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, hey, have a good night, and I'm sure we'll be in touch here. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.